On average, U.S. broadband households with smart home devices own more than 7 devices and spend thousands of dollars a year on home services. Parks Associates Consumer Insights dashboards share adoption, consumer demand, and market changes across the year for 5 leading markets serving the connected home to identify critical shifts in these markets and in consumer sentiment by tracking the core metrics that matter. This consumer research draws from surveys of more than 10,000 U.S. households, including trending data, sometimes reaching back more than a decade. Parks Associates offers consumer insights dashboards for 5 markets: home services, consumer electronics, video services, residential security, and smart home. To share a little more, we recently released the Smart Home Dashboard, revealing that 1/4 of U.S. broadband households bought at least one smart home device in the past 12 months. And households with at least one smart home device now own, on average, more than 7 devices. This dashboard covers the extensive product categories active in the smart home, including smart thermostats, smart appliances, network cameras, video doorbells, smart smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, smart door locks, smart garage door openers, and smart lighting products, among others. We also recently announced the release of the Home Services Dashboard, tracking broadband, mobile, and other consumer services. This dashboard shows that as of Q1 2021, the percentage of U.S. broadband households with standalone broadband service increased from 33% in Q1 2018 to 41% in Q1 2021, following the declining popularity of pay TV bundles. These consumers pay $64 per month on average for standalone broadband service, up from just $39 per broadband household in 2011, a 64% growth rate. The fastest growing segment of home service bundles is a double play combining home internet and mobile service. Consumers are placing a greater emphasis on high quality broadband and mobile services, which is building value in bundling these services. Both the residential broadband and mobile industries experienced substantial growth during 2020 and into the first half of 2021, with demand particularly strong for high-speed internet and fiber connections. And 19% of U.S. broadband households currently bundle mobile and home internet services, paying an average of $128 per month. Going forward, 24% of U.S. broadband households reported plans to upgrade their home broadband, which would drive broadband service ARPU upwards 5% year over year. Adoption of residential security services has also continued to increase following the COVID-19 pandemic, creating additional bundling opportunities among connectivity and peace of mind services heading into the second half of 2021. Our dashboards provide companies with ongoing and actionable data on the adoption, purchase intentions, and trends for key markets serving the connected consumer at home. We are excited to bring this valuable trending data and insights to the market. To subscribe or request more information, please contact our sales team at sales@parksassociates.com.
If you miss a live session, you can go back at any time to watch on demand. Go to Watch Replays and click on the session that you want to view. Have you created your own event agenda and swap card? Visit the Agenda and Watch Replay tabs to add sessions that interest you to your own event. You can go back to My Event to revisit any bookmarked sessions, sponsors, and items. We want to make sure that you're connecting with our industry-leading sponsors. You can interact with them by visiting the Booths and the Sponsor tab. You can also bookmark sponsors or add items to your event to view later. Sponsors have uploaded extra materials for attendees. Make sure to visit sponsors that interest you to chat with one of their team members or save documents for later. We have dedicated meeting slots set up for break times between sessions. Continue the discussion by requesting meetings from others in the SwapCard platform. Schedule a meeting with another attendee or a sponsor by visiting their page. The panelists and speakers will be addressing your questions live during the stream. During the stream, use the question tab to ask your questions early in the presentation. Go to the poll tab to answer polls that will be discussed during the live stream. If you need help navigating SwapCard, please reach out to our team by mentioning @Parks Associates in the chat box or by contacting one of our team members via our company page.
Thank you for joining us at Smart Energy Summit. Currently, 44% of U.S. internet households report they actively work to reduce energy consumption at home. This executive event brings insight from our research team, leaders from utilities, telecom, and security companies, as well as manufacturing, software, retailers, and more, to talk about the future of energy for consumers at home. We survey 10,000 broadband households each quarter to provide the most reliable and accurate view of the market. Smart Energy Summit brings together industry leaders to learn more about how consumers can play an active role in energy savings, as well as the future of distributed energy resources, distribution and channels for energy management solutions, consumer adoption and trends of smart energy devices, increased interest in electric vehicles, grid modernization, and more. Join us to address these key questions regarding the smart energy industry. Thank you for joining us today at Smart Energy Summit.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the latest edition of Smart Energy Summit virtual conference series. Today, we're going to be talking about home energy management solutions and driving energy savings. First, we're going to start with me sharing some slides and some data that we have been looking at recently on the topic. Following Hi. So I hope we're back after a little tech snafu there, but I was in the middle of thanking sponsors. So let me thank Schneider Electric, SmartThings, Rapid Response Monitoring, Zen Ecosystems, and Particle. Also want to thank our supporters. These different organizations have been working with us for years now to help get the word out about the events, share our information. We do a lot of co-promotion and really appreciate the partnership with these guys. Actually just did a webinar with CEDIA yesterday called House of Power, talking about some energy topics. So some of this audience might be interested in going over there and checking that out if you're CEDIA members. Also a reminder, we're going to have 2 more virtual sessions this year. In August, we're going to be talking about electric vehicles. I'm really excited about that one. We have a big report coming out around that same time. So we're going to be sharing new data then. And also in November, we're going to be talking about distributed energy and shifting value from a centralized grid. So talking about DERs is always an interesting topic. We're looking to have a great conversation then as well. I have a solar and storage report coming out at that time period too. So hopefully some new information will be shared then. All right, so let's get to my data here so that we're not delaying the panel. So today in my presentation, I want to talk about perceptions of energy costs from the perspective of the consumers. Also, what data the consumers say they want versus what they have today. And then finally, potential for more data and control of energy in the future based on new technology coming out and some new best practices in the industry. So the information I'm sharing in this little presentation is coming largely from a big report that we published earlier this year called Smart Energy at Home, Renewable, Responsive, Resilient. So if you're interested in a deeper dive on any of the topics that we share, definitely contact us and look at that report. Also, I'm pulling some information from a very recently published report called Smart Home Products, Mapping the Buyer Journey. And in that report, we're examining how people make their decisions on what devices they buy, where they get their information, what channel they buy from, how those products are delivered and installed. A whole very tactical, detailed look at how people are getting devices from in stores and on their walls. So first, today, I want to start by talking about consumer perceptions of electric bills. We see that more than half of the internet households we spoke with said that electricity costs were too high. Now, you may think that higher incomes would alleviate this concern a little bit, and we see that that's not really the case. It's fairly flat. There's some other demographics that are causing some movement here, like family size and things like that, but it's not income. People who are making a good amount of money are still concerned about their rising energy costs. We also asked about attitudes, and we saw that nearly all of our respondents say that they want to reduce consumption. If you look kind of across the continuum, on one side, you have only 16% of people saying that costs are not high enough to make them worry. I'm interested to see how that's going to change in the next year as energy prices are going up. But for now, or at the end of Q4 2021, when we pulled this data, it was 16%. So they might even be higher right now, since we're seeing gas prices go up and so many changes in the energy markets. But then if you look across the continuum, I'm going to talk about these people a lot today, because these people are looking for more information and are looking for help from industry players in terms of getting their energy consumption down so that they can reduce costs. The other important topic that we're going to talk about today is the access that consumers have to energy information and their ability to process what they're receiving. So we asked consumers, are you aware of the daily breakdown that you're receiving from energy providers? A lot of our energy providers we talked to are providing updates either in a platform or via email on a pretty frequent basis, usually daily. So we are talking to these consumers, and we see that only about a third of them say that the breakdown contains all the information they need. Then we follow up by asking, what type of information would you want? And what they gave us was, we want more granular, more frequent, more up-to-date information. They want energy usage by device. They want real-time data on home energy use as a whole. And they want tracking tools that relate to specific actions so that they can understand when they do certain behaviors, how much energy is increased or decreased. So this is very detailed, robust information that they want. Now, one of the big tools for controlling home energy use and conveying information about home energy use in the consumer base right now in terms of what devices are installed is smart thermostats. After an initial bump and surge in adoption, we have lately been tracking some pretty flat ownership and adoption numbers. That's concerning because that impacts not just the ability of the consumers to control their energy, but also impacts programs like demand response and others that rely on automation from outside organizations that are looking to control energy for cost savings or to prevent problems with the grid. Now, what's interesting about this flat thermostat situation is that the thermostat owners are actually very happy with their thermostats. Very few of them, as we're showing here, say that they saved less than expected, and about half say that they saved more. So it seems like an opportunity for the word to get out, to be shared. Similarly, the demand response programs that people are enrolled in, they find are largely better than they expected. It's, again, a very small group that said it was very unpleasant. So more opportunity here for spread of those important programs that help save energy. Now, additionally, we have a number of devices on the market outside of just thermostats that help consumers control energy in their home and monitor how much they're using. Now, one of the kind of introductory ones that can help with some low voltage, small devices that we have in the home, not big loads like HVAC, but I kind of think of this as the little stepping stone, little foot in the door for energy monitoring is smart plugs. And we are seeing a little growth there. So we see that about half of the smart plugs that are purchased are under $30. Now, I'm not sure if all of those are necessarily going to have energy monitoring because that's a little bit of a low number. But on average, we're seeing 49. There's plenty of people who are spending more and getting smart plugs that have more features. I have some examples here of TP-Link and CASA and a Wemo product that have energy monitoring that is very affordable that people could use, for example, for their countertop appliances in the kitchen that use a little bit of load, and for their bathroom things like hair dryers and hair straighteners, just some of the devices in the home that use a little bit more load so that consumers can start to get an understanding of how their energy use changes over time. Another opportunity that's accessible to everyone, including low income and people who live in MDUs and people who are renters, is smart window unit ACs. We're seeing a little bit of surge in ownership last year, but then purchase intention is down. So kind of expecting a little bit of cyclical movement here after people apparently went out and got window units to support their work from home and maybe climate change issues as well. But this is an opportunity for another energy monitoring and control device that is affordable, under $500. And finally, for everyone else who aren't as concerned about cost, smart appliances are an excellent opportunity for people to take control of some of the bigger loads that they have in their home, including washers and dryers and other heating elements like stovetops, refrigerators as well, because we know that ice makers and things like that have periodically increasing loads that can be controlled by smart devices. So it's not just a nice feature to be able to control your fancy new oven, but it's also an energy tool. So I just wanted to kind of raise that issue here. Then finally, the big one that is, we're just on the precipice of this. We're looking at potential for huge growth in the EV market. And if home charging comes to follow that, as we expect it will, then we'll see a lot more energy use at home and another kind of big load for people to be managing when they're trying to keep their energy costs down. So we're showing 16% purchase intent for EVs right here, but that number doubles or triples when you start looking at particular demographics, such as high income people, college educated, people who are more interested in technology that we're labeling as innovators and early adopters, parents with kids at home, and then, of course, current EV owners who are already enthusiasts that are looking to upgrade from their more, previous generation EVs to the fancier new ones. Now, some more devices that are coming out. We actually have a bunch of panelists that are representing some of these companies and some sponsors too. So I just wanted to kind of raise the issue that we have circuit level monitoring and control as well. Also panels, and then Schneider's line of Wiser products cover everything from smart plugs all the way to the home center, energy center. That is their panel. Also, we have Eaton speaking later. They have devices in this range too for energy monitoring and control at the meter. Also, I would say that there's a number of organizations that are working outside of the home that are working on behalf of consumers and with utility companies to try and improve access to data for consumers. And that includes a bunch of organizations that we talk to on a regular basis. And so I just wanted to kind of raise these organizations up a little bit too. So overall, what we see is that costs are high. People want help saving energy. They don't know how. But the bright side is that there's some solutions on the market today, and there's more coming soon to help them manage their rising energy costs and energy consumption as we move towards electrification of the home. All right, great. So with that, I would like to transition here to my panel. Let's start bringing my panelists in. We have a good lineup here. I'm going to introduce them one by one and give them a chance to kind of tell you a little bit about their companies. So first, I'd like to introduce Colin Billings, the CEO and founder of Oro. Colin, do I have you?
Yeah, good morning, Chris. How are you doing?
Hi, Colin. Thanks for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about Oro?
Excited to be here. Yeah, Oro is the creator of the Smart Living System, which uses sensors and digital inputs to help create a proactive home experience focused on lighting, control of the other systems in your home, both for comfort and ease, but also energy efficiency.
Great. Thanks for being here. Bob Champagne, Vice President of Customer Experience and Innovation for Smart Energy Water. Thank you for being here, Bob. Can you tell us a little bit about Smart Energy Water? You got to unmute yourself. Come on, Bob, you're a veteran.
How's that?
There you go.
Sorry about that, guys. So yeah, as Chris said, I'm Bob Champagne. I'm Vice President of Customer Experience Innovation at SEW. Just a little bit about myself. I've been in and around the energy and utility space just about my whole career, which is longer than I care to admit. Almost all of that has been in the customer experience space, work with energy providers directly, consultant to some of whom I consider to be the best, and a number of water companies across the world, and as well as a technology provider of solutions. I've been heavily focused on the role of customer data in almost all of those roles, advanced analytics, AI, and how those insights are digitalizing and reinventing customer journeys and experiences. Just a little bit about SEW. We're probably most known for our customer experience platform, our portals, our mobile app, which currently powers the digital experience of energy providers globally. We're touching over 1 billion people today with that, was just kind of an amazing feat. Why I joined SEW. Clients like San Diego Gas and Electric, Alliant, Southwest Gas, Simply Energy, and just about 300 plus others, consistently generating 5-star experiences from literally thousands of users. It's just a sliver of what we do. Our overarching mission is to engage, educate, and empower billions of citizens, not just people who pay the bill, but across the households as well. And into the communities and smart cities they reside. That starts with what we do in the area of energy providers in their engagement with customers on the top left of this chart. I won't go through all of the details on this chart, but basics like billing, payments, starting service, outage, things like that. For us, those journeys are really where are really the start of shaping customer behavior and getting customers to not only care but act on the data and energy intelligence we have. Going counterclockwise, we're very active in the energy efficiency space, both in terms of behavioral efficiency and the journeys that we catalyze for educating and enrolling customers in more structured programs like New Tech and DR. We're now heavily involved in the EV space through EV shopping and ownership journeys in our CX platform. as well as a new business we call Smart E-Mobility, which helps utilities architect more comprehensive programs focused on charging infrastructure, plans, pricing, and the downstream relationship with the e-mobility ecosystems. And then we also have integrations with various communities and smart cities to push engagement more to citizens. And then finally, at the very top right, we won't talk much about it today, but we're very active in the water sector. We see the nexus between water and energy is a really important part of the decarbonization and climate equation. But for us, data and analytics, AI, it underpins pretty much every aspect of this landscape. And it's one of our, frankly, our biggest differentiators, using data that we have on our customers, their usage, and the grid, and putting that data and the insights to work for customers and the extended ecosystem of market participants, like many of the ones we have here today. So thanks again, and we're looking forward to a great discussion.
Okay. We have a blended name here. So Dan Sullivan, aka David Sullivan, founder and CEO of EIQ Home. Thanks for joining us. The reason here is we had David Chang coming, but now we have Dan Sullivan here. I'm excited to have you. I talked to David recently, but I haven't talked to you on a panel. So Dan, why don't you tell us from your perspective, tell us about EIQ Home.
Thank you, Chris. And that's actually perfect. I always make a joke because David and I work very closely together on almost everything, and we describe ourselves as the yin and yang of EIQ Home. So you captured that essence right there in that title slide. So briefly, EIQ Home was founded really to help consumers save money and save the world. That was our humble goal when we founded the concept of this company. Yet the EIQ Home platform represents the future of home energy management by giving consumers a central platform and digital tools necessary to make smart and sustainable home energy management decisions. EIQ Home was built with the latest automation and artificial intelligence using AWS native cloud solutions, natural language processing, robotic process automation, and API integrations with multiple third parties and smart energy devices. EIQ Home delivers an unrivaled consumer experience for consumers looking for their go-to site for home energy management. And we believe that EIQ Home provides the doorway to the autonomous smart home that will eventually support the personalized goals for climate, cost, and comfort for our consumers. EIQ Home, we're founded here in Houston. My background, I've been in retail energy for over 20 years now. I am an energy vet. And prior to that, I was in consumer packaged goods. So doing marketing for companies like Nabisco, Sara Lee, and Coty Cosmetics. So a little bit of a varied background for the energy sector, but always based on my experience, always focused on bringing anything that we offer back to the consumer and what the consumer needs are. That's it. Thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you. All right, and last but not least, we have Jay Lassiter, VP of Sales for Landis & Gyr North America. Hello, Jay. How you doing?
Hey, I'm great, Chris. Thanks for that. And I really like Dan's introduction. Sometimes I say we're saving the world 1 meter at a time. Okay, nice. So I think that's a great theme. Hello, everyone. As Chris mentioned, my name is Jay Lassiter. I'm the Vice President of Industry and Growth and have the sales and marketing function for Landis & Gyr for the Americas. Real happy to be here today. A little background, on Landis & Gyr. We are a worldwide company, really focused on, IoT, the Internet of Things, and smart grid. A heavy history in metering and AMI, or advanced metering infrastructure. You can see some of the stats on the slide here. We've been around for over 125 years. So as long as there's been electricity, we've been measuring it, and are very proud to work with over 3,500 utilities worldwide. We have the largest smart electric deployment in the world at TEPCO, Tokyo Electric, and the largest smart gas deployment in the world at British Gas. So I'll just highlight those two. But we also work with any size utility throughout the world, down to some of the smallest co-ops. So again, happy to be here today, and appreciate the introduction, Chris.
Thank you, Jay. And thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. So I want to start with a kind of a basic question that gets at what I was describing just a few minutes ago in my presentation. So we see that the energy consumers are saying that they want to save money. They're also saying that they have access to some data, but they don't seem very happy with it. You guys are all trying to help them get more data. What's going on? What can we do here to help us out? This is as broad a question as we can get. What's going on? Colin, can you tell me?
I think, there's increasingly more sources of data, which is a great thing and is essential towards creating reduced consumption. What we see is that the effort that goes between understanding the data and actually implementing that into regular patterns of behavior at lower consumption levels is where things break down. So there's a big difference between knowing and being able to do something about it. And right now, most of the systems are sort of in the process of becoming more connected. They need to go from being analog to being more connected, and then they need another piece that helps them become intelligent. And that intelligence is less about sort of IQ for the purposes of IQ, but actually about implementing effortless efficiency, where these systems are really saving energy for the end consumer automatically, rather than asking an individual to make a multitude of decisions every day about energy reduction.
Yeah, I agree with that, with everything Colin mentioned. I think for us, it comes back to the three things I mentioned earlier, right? Educating, engaging, and empowering customers. And when you think about those three pieces, only a little bit of that, even though we're all data junkies, only a little bit of that really is about the data itself. It's about how can you weave that data and the insights you get from it into immersive customer journeys that cause customers to actually act. And to us, it's really, can you hit customers with the right action at the right time, in the right place, and in the right context. And for us, again, that context really relates to where the customer is at that moment in time. So, they could be in the middle of a bill payment journey. They could have problems with getting energy assistance to pay their bill. It might be that they're looking for some information around solar or EV. But if you give them the intelligence at the wrong time, you're going to miss that opportunity. So it's all about time, context, place, and weaving it into the customer journey so that the information you give them is actionable within their lifestyle.
Dan, I see you nodding. Do you want to chime in?
I think Bob is spot on. I take a little bit of a different angle on it and a little bit of a different twist, which is personalization. And I think of companies like Netflix and Amazon and their ability to provide a level of service and customer experience that is based on, the behavior and the wants of the customer. I think there's huge opportunity to do that in energy also, with the proliferation of, all the smart energy devices, the amount of data that's being generated from the home currently, and what's in store for the future is going to be incredible. You match that up with data that's available from other sources to help really understand consumer attitudes and behaviors. I think there's a real opportunity to get the consumer truly engaged in their home energy. And when I say engaged, data does not do that. It's really the insights and the actions and the results that are the result of that data. So there's almost a hierarchy of information that we can provide the consumer that will, again, prove to them that we have a valuable service for them.
Got it. What do you think, Jay? How'd these guys do? Did they get it?
No, look, I think they hit it, Chris. I guess the only thing I'd add, and maybe just to reinforce some of the research even you showed to open this up.
Please do that.
Yeah. I think what that shows us, and we all know we may not like this, okay, but it's tough to get in consumers engaged on this topic. And I guess what I'd add is, on if you look at commercial and industrial customers, right, they have engaged, right, because there's enough economic benefit for them to do that. And again, I think what your research showed, and I think, again, we all know, people want to save money, in consumers on the residential side, but, they don't want to work that hard for it. And, economics is not enough to get them to do that. So, from my perspective, again, maybe reinforcing what I think the other panelists are really hitting on too, the key is we got to make it easy. We got to make it fast. I go back to my old software days. I mean, nobody wants to use software unless it's really easy to use. And I think that's the challenge for us in this industry is, how we get good information to people in a way they can use it so they can engage and, and get that kind of consumer engagement.
That's great. Speaking of engagement, I'm seeing some questions coming in from the audience, which is great. So I want to encourage people to be typing questions into their sort of chat box in SwapCard. Also, we have 2 polls in there. I'm going to be visiting the results of those polls in a little bit, and then have the panelists react to what the audience is saying. But for now, I wanted to kind of follow up. So far, we've been talking about what's good for the consumer. It's good for the consumer. Okay, cool. But how can players make money on this? So what do you guys see as the low-hanging fruit in terms of monetization of this energy data? What are opportunities for players to benefit on this side?
Well, Chris, I'll just chime in quickly on monetization. I think as Dan and Jay alluded to, it is about helping customers, commercial and residential, save money, right? And so that's the obvious one, right? We want to turn those energy choices and the behavioral changes we want and the technology they implement into monetary value for the customer, which is why it's probably, as Jay said, easier for the commercial customers to make that value case. I also think there's enormous value across the value chain. If you can get really good at isolating the impact of a certain appliance in real time or just through detection, isolating an EV that you identify, or bringing in the behavioral movements that customers have in their lifestyle throughout the day, and you can see that in the data, then you can make some pretty big impacts in terms of the grid, in terms of planning and reliability of the grid. You can make impacts in terms of the supply side, the procurement of energy, in terms of better forecast. And you can make a lot of impact when you get outside of the 4 walls of the energy provider into third parties who can bring new sources of value to customers. And I just close by that comment by saying it really goes back to, how a customer it goes back to value, not only money, right? And so there are segments of the population who want to make an impact on the climate agenda, and identifying those customers and interacting with them at the right time and place is critical.
Okay, thank you, Bob. What do you think, Colin? What's your reaction?
I would first echo what Bob just shared, which is our research really shows that the potential dollar value of energy savings is not tipping the scale in favor of more effort on energy savings. Really effective energy reduction is going to save between a couple $100 to $1,000 a year for most households. and that's not even a vacation. So really other things have to come into play as well. Part of it, like Jay said, is making it really easy. Two is connecting to the themes around climate and responsibility and sort of showing easy ways for people to, do their part in that sort of collective action. But there's also other sources of possibly increasing that that monetary incentive. At least we see it out there with some of our partners. And that kind of comes in sort of looking at things like the adoption of EV and the changing changing utilization patterns for the grid. Really there's economic incentive to work on that and manage that for the utilities in the grid. And so how do we sort of transfer participation in things like demand response requests, time of use programs, shifting or sort of transferring value from the commercial actors that are really and focused on that to the end consumer. We could see that monetary value go up and more people care about it.
What do you think, Jay? Where is there more money to be made in data from your point of view, and where you guys are located in the chain?
Yeah, look, I think I'd like to pick up on some of the social and maybe environmental kind of concern and that concept. We see a big push out of that from big business, and corporations. But I think there's more to be done there in terms of the end consumer. And I'm representing Landis & Gyr. We have ESG requirements. I would dare to venture most utilities do, and most suppliers to them. And I think there's an environmental theme that we don't talk about enough. And I've really tried to emphasize that in a lot of the things we're doing. Whether that equates to real dollars or not, but if we can get that engagement from there, the kind of commercialization will happen. So I think that's what I'd bring to this topic, Chris, is really kind of a focus on ESG.
Yeah, I saw you start nodding, Dan, when he started kind of moving towards ESG. Is that what you were thinking too?
He's saying something I agree with, so that's why I was nodding. So,
yeah.
No, it's, and actually the way I've been thinking about it lately is I defined it really as the 3 C's: climate, cost, and comfort, as being kind of the key factors that motivate people. And trying to find that motivation, I think, depending on who you're talking to, the order of that hierarchy may be different. So I do believe, and I'm very bullish about what we're doing here, is that the macro trends are that people are going to be paying a lot more attention to the environment. They're going to be paying a lot more attention to the cost, especially as we go into a higher price environment for fossil fuels and for the overall price of electricity. So in the past, we always complained about customers not being engaged. I was with a supplier where 40% of our customers didn't know that they were a customer of ours. Right. So people were totally unengaged. I feel like that is changing. And your slide, Chris, earlier in the presentation that talked about how people want to find ways of saving, but they just don't know how, I think presents a huge opportunity for us as a group to go and make it easy for folks. And not just to provide them data, but to provide them relevant information. And one of the simple things that we try to do is provide information in dollars instead of kilowatt hours, because we all have friends. We've all been invited to cocktail parties, and we start talking kilowatt hours. It goes right over. So you start talking dollars, and you apply those dollars to devices, and you apply it to, for example, a time of use environment. It becomes a very, very powerful tool.
I've got one more C for Dan, which is compliance. I think we're going to see a changing regulatory landscape where participation in sort of energy reduction, consumption, smart grid is going to become part of compliance and building codes, and potentially even directly to the end consumer. We'll most likely see those things as tax benefits, whether they're credits or deductions. And I think that there's a net benefit to the overall sort of world and grid in that we get more control, we get more data. But for the end consumer, they're saying, hey, I can upgrade my house and half of this is going to be paid for by the government in some form. And so there's going to be, more and more of that. I mean, the jurisdictional map of all of this in the United States is pretty scary, but the more we see leaders sort of have successes, I think we'll see that expand.
Just on the compliance thing, I want to maybe pick up on that a little bit. Because it comes back to our topic of data and analytics. We think in utilities and energy providers, we think about the usage data that we have and how we're going to use it with our customers. Something that we're pretty heavily involved in is the shift into the new standard on the green button. I know all of us are aware of Green Button, the Green Button Alliance. I serve on the board, not as a plug for Green Button Alliance, but we're watching this shift in standard to, and for those of you who don't know what it is, it's all about how can we take the data from smart meters, customers' data, and allow them to have more control over it and take it outside the four walls of the utility or the energy provider and connect it with this broader ecosystem of third parties. The reason that's really important to what Colin just said is that these third parties, if you think of a commercial customer that's spread across 5 different jurisdictions, right? If they're not getting the smart meter data in a consistent and accurate and safe and secure format, then they're not going to be able to meet their obligations, whether those are commitments, whether they're exposed to penalties for not hitting certain decarbonization targets where supply is matching the demand profiles. And so, for a customer to be able to share their data from whichever energy provider to a particular third party who might be doing carbon tracing, for example, that transfer of data outside of the 4 walls has to be done in a super consistent way. And there's a whole new body of standards that's emerging. In Ontario, every utility has to comply by the middle of next year. That is going to be super critical to being able to not only leverage data, but be able to use it regardless of what jurisdiction a customer happens to be sitting in.
All right, so this is bringing me really nicely to my next topic that I want to bring up. I even see an audience question about it too, so this is perfect. Compliance, data sharing outside of the walls of just the consumer's home and the energy provider's kind of little circle of trust that they have regarding their energy data. That's going to raise privacy issues. We already see people having issues with demand response programs because they're weirded out by the idea of energy providers touching their devices in their homes. So I think it's important for us to talk for a second about privacy. Jay, I wanted to go to you first. What do you think about the sort of what is the climate going to be like for data privacy going forward as these issues expand? Is the industry ready? Are you guys ready? What's the data privacy story going to be?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing up this topic, Chris, and coming to me first, even maybe, because I personally believe privacy is the hot topic, okay, for the foreseeable future in this space. And in the past, we've kind of dealt with a lot of different topics as we're deploying technology. But the more we engage, in consumers, who owns this data? Your question earlier about how it gets monetized. In a regulatory environment, this all has to be sorted out. And, I think we're in the throes of that discussion today, at the federal level. And then, throughout all the different states, you see a lot of, discussion upon it in regulatory filings. So look, I appreciate the compliance topic as well. And, I think that's going to happen on the utility side as well. I think they're going to be pushed in this direction. They already are being pushed in this direction. What are the benefits that the end consumer are going to get? And, as that becomes a regulatory compliant for a lot of investor-owned utilities, they're going to be pushing in that direction. I don't know that we have all the answers, but who owns the data? who's going to get access to it, and then again to the point earlier, how it gets dollarized. Me is one of the best topics that we have in the industry for the foreseeable future.
So another. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I think just one point. I agree with everything Jay was saying. I think we have to recognize that we have to earn the trust of the consumer with their data. I believe, and we believe, the consumer owns their home energy data, and they should be allowed to provide access to competitive service providers like our companies to utilize that data to provide value for them. But we have to move very carefully. We can't make the mistakes that some of the other industries have made in terms of having long terms of services with secret little areas where we can share data with such and such. We've got to earn that trust, and we've got to be very careful, and we've got to progress very carefully to do that. But if we do earn that trust, and then that enables a whole level of really autonomous types of services that will allow us to really support kind of the 4 C's now of what we're trying to hit.
Nice. I appreciate you adopting that 4th C. So another.
I've trademarked it already.
Wow. Sorry, Colin. So audience question here about the tech giants, and I think they are relevant here because a lot of the devices that are going to be gathering this data inside the consumer's home are going to be coming from a handful of companies, right? And if you start thinking about platforms as well, you add in the couple of big security players that are going to be kind of middlemen, I guess, in moving this data around. So thinking about privacy, but also otherwise, what is the role of the tech giants going to be from y'all's perspective in terms of how this space is going to grow and how more data is going to get to consumers in a better way when they're kind of holding some of the reins at the consumer facing level?
I think there's really 2 ways that we see it from our side as a device and system manufacturer and service provider, which is I think most importantly for this is that we work on interconnectivity of these devices, right? So, the vision that we see for the world is that these devices all can talk to one another and can be orchestrated regardless of your brands and products to achieve more efficiency. So it's, there's a standard called Matter that's been pushed forward with great participation from the Googles and Amazons and Apples of the world, and that I think required their effort and participation to really, have a chance. So interoperability is big, and then data portability, right? To the extent that these devices are able to manage, collect, sense consumption data, making sure that that's freely movable, because otherwise we're going to be captive to their ecosystems and reliant on them rather than a competitive market for using that for benefit.
And
all right.
I think also we can look to competitive industries, other industries in terms of how they're doing this, not only on the security side, but with respect to how they use data. I mean, if you're using a third-party financial application, how easy is it to connect that to your bank account? I mean, it's a simple. It's so simple yet so secure. In terms of how you authenticate and authorize and do that all within the same simple customer journey without even having to leave the third party's website or mobile app, right? We can authorize the bank account, what accounts we want to share. That's the same way it needs to be with data from whether it's smart meters to other data streams that are owned, as appropriately said by all of you, owned by the customer. And it's really needs to be. We need to be good custodians of that data on the customer's behalf, both from a safety, security, and simplicity standpoint. How fast we can get those insights to them.
All right, thanks, guys. I have another audience question that I like here. So here we go. Regarding consumer engagement, how do we do what the consumer would do if they were paying attention without them having to do it? So a lot of our focus here is talking about empowering the consumer, but what about the automation piece? What about the sort of ability for energy providers or other parties to kind of take the reins a little bit and make this happen without requiring consumers to learn anything about energy, since it seems like they are not haven't put in the effort so far. You know what I'm saying? So what about automation as a role in terms of making some of these things happen for the consumers without their actions? Dan?
I'll jump in. I mean, I think the time is perfect with, the advent of, hyper connectivity of all the home devices, the digitalization of our capability to take data and put it into insights and define actions based on that. I think that we can build platforms or tools for the consumer where they can be as involved as they want to be. They can maintain control if they're not sure. As they gain more confidence, then they can allow the system to take more control. And eventually, when folks get comfortable, then I think they will be very interested in having a system that does the work for them, meets their objectives, whether it's cost, comfort, or climate, and then we just build products and services on top of that to continue to support it. But I think we're at the beginning of a real phase of transformation for energy, where that consumer engagement is going to be really a big benefit. People will become much more comfortable with it.
Well, look, it happens from two different ends of the spectrum, right? We see it today already in terms of devices like smart thermostats, right? That makes it really easy. I think the other end of the spectrum, one we're really excited about, is what's happening in e-mobility, right? I mean, today, the way it happens is we detect that a customer might be charging outside of a typical time of use window, and we send them a notification. Where we see this evolving is where utilities and our clients who are putting in more EV managed charging solutions, where it's going to detect it instantaneously. There may be a price plan that says if you want it charged by 8 o'clock every morning, it's this price, fixed price per day. If you want it charged in, all the time, it's this price per day. And there'll be an automation behind the scenes that's actually optimizing and orchestrating that with the grid, with the home, and with the vehicle, to be in a position to make those decisions for customers and just weave it into their lifestyle. Like Dan's colleague David says, how can we make it simple? How do we take this complex decision away from customers and make it to where it's dummy proof for people like me.
The one thing I would
go ahead, Colin.
The one thing I'd add to this is that we have to really balance or really pay attention to the impact on perceived quality of life and comfort that these activities require, right? And so right now, most of the systems in the world that do demand response or other energies, I mean, are really just looking at a digital dashboard, right? I know a thermostat is at a particular percentage. I know if I have a smart panel, I know what loads are consuming power right now. And that's actually has a pretty large blind spot in it. And so we at Oro have really focused on detecting and understanding precedents both at the home level and at an individual and granular level within the floor plan, because that understanding of how a home is being used right now allows any piece of software, whether it's part of Oro or EIQ Home or even at the utility level, to make decisions that don't result in disfavorable experiences, right? It sort of allows you to say, live, and we're not going to ask you to overly sacrifice for this. But when we see that shot, we're going to take it to reduce the energy. And so, for example, with lighting, Oro reduces on average about 70% of your lighting load consumption just by using physical sensors in the environment, things like ambient light sensors, understanding, like natural light and availability, and just layers in the right lighting perfectly, and you do nothing about it, right? And that's the similar approach that we're taking to broader energy consumption, things like smart thermostats. Hey, we know you're not home, whether you're leaving at 8 a.m. in the morning normally, or everybody left this morning at 7, so that we can start stepping in and helping the homeowner and eventually, even the grid sort of say, what's our potential capacity for production here, and can we take it without resulting in a negative experience?
Yeah, so we're seeing in one of our poll questions here that the leader of value-added services from the audience's perspective is whole home energy management as an opportunity for services, and also we also had an audience question that was related to how to balance solar generation versus battery storage in the home versus consumer demand versus grid. So my kind of supposition a little bit in the presentation that I had before is that there's a device answer, and maybe it's at the panel circuit level. But I wanted to kind of check with you guys, like looking forward, what is the solution for better whole home energy management going to be? Is it going to be a software solution? Is it a device solution? And who is kind of pulling the strings on that?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with that one if I can, Chris. Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is both. Okay, I mean, you need the hardware and the software piece, but the thing we're seeing in the marketplace is the hardware really getting started, and I think the evolution we're seeing is, opposed to having sensors or devices in the field that were singular purposed, you're seeing a lot of multi-purpose devices. Again, in our business, we're a core metering business. We don't even call them meters anymore. They're sensors. They do so much more than measurement, and really have the ability to be a hub, that provide a tremendous amount of information that then software providers and other folks can come and participate in that ecosystem, and really use that kind of rich data that's coming. But our devices these days, it's a line sensor, it's a data disag device, it's of course a meter as well, and I think that kind of new hardware that's coming on, opens so many different possibilities, throughout the broader ecosystem.
All right, great. We have 1 second left. Does anyone have a last thing to add?
The other real big thing that's going to change things is EV adoption, right?
Yep.
We're having, 5 times the energy storage of a normal battery stack for your garage that is mobile, that can be charged during the day while you're at work and brought home in the evening and used to do things like peak shaving and time of use shifting. Obviously there's a world where you have full generation on your own home, and you're going to need to think about how you store then, because your car is probably not there. But that battery in the car is going to really change things.
I can't leave, Chris, without mentioning my father-in-law that I mentioned in our last session.
Now famous.
An 87-year-old guy who's on his third EV that I guarantee you there's not one utility on the planet who would have built that into their energy assumptions.
It's gonna be everybody. I keep telling everybody at work here that they're gonna replace all their ICEs. I don't know if people in Texas believe it, but it's coming. All right, everyone. Thank you for your time. We got to transition to our keynote, but it's a great conversation. I could talk to you guys about nerdy energy stuff forever, but we'll have to pick that up in a couple months here in the next session. And I'm looking forward to the keynote too. So I hope you guys stick around to listen. Thank you to the audience for answering the poll questions and putting in questions. I'll try and ask Jen, who's doing the panel later, to see if she can finish up answering all the questions. I'm sure she'll appreciate that challenge, but I'll pass it over to her. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to bring in everyone to do the keynote. So keep an eye out for the energy leadership keynote. Thank you.
Welcome back, and thank you, Chris, for that great discussion. Really interesting comments. I'm excited to join you here to welcome our next speaker. I'm Elizabeth Parks, the President and Chief Marketing Officer of Parks Associates. It's so clear that we are only at the very beginning stages of energy management solutions, despite decades in the making. At Parks Associates, we're looking closely at consumer adoption, habits, behaviors, uses, and perceptions of emerging technology through our survey work of 10,000 households every quarter in the United States. I'm so pleased to be able to welcome Nathan Ford, Director of Life Cycle Optimization at NRG Energy, who's working to understand what drives consumers to care about energy management and what this looks like in the future as far as utility programs that are coming out. So we're going to talk about the huge Texas market serving 26 million households, what demand response means to consumers, and what they want from energy management solutions, especially the utility players. We're going to ask and hear from Nathan about current customer demand and satisfaction metrics, as well as the future of home energy management. So Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's go ahead and get started and see if you could do a brief introduction of your role now and maybe a little bit of some of your history in your career, given your extensive experience.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. Like I said, she said, my name is Nathan Ford. I'm the Director of Lifecycle Optimization at NRG. Our team's mission is to help guide business partners to make more profitable decisions based on customer insights. Our team is kind of the data science hub within NRG Home. NRG Home, as you might already know, sells power and gas to homes and small businesses across North America, from South Texas up to Canada. Our goal at NRG Home is to try to help people find sustainable and solutions for power and gas that meet them where they are. And so our team, as the ragtag group of data scientists, we're here to help different departments, whether it's sales or retention, pricing, or long-term innovation. We sit at the table with our business partners and really just help guide them, advise them on different ways that they could improve their decision making.
I think we might have lost your sound just a little bit there.
Yeah, I'm back.
There you are. You're
so
back.
We build models, dashboards, tables, but also just ultimately provide those consulting services to folks across NRG Home. Prior to my time, working more on the retail customer side of the business, I had a history in load forecasting. Working more in commercial operations. Supporting traders, helping them buy and sell the right amount of power for the NRG portfolio. And prior to that was at ERCOT. So that was my entry into the industry. I joined ERCOT years ago when people thought I worked at Epcot. Folks didn't really know what it was. And I was, again, focused on load forecasting, short and long term, supporting the grid operators, the transmission, system planners, and delivering products like the CDR and the SARA reports.
Okay, great. Well, let's start the conversation off and talk about, how does consumer engagement work as far as the utility services that are providing? Can you share in your perspective, and maybe looking specifically at the Texas market, what works and what doesn't? Are there any things in the past that you can share that are, this just isn't going to work? It's not going to capture anybody's interest. We're not able to get them on board with new programs we're rolling out, or the complicated market is too hard to engage consumers at that level with whatever solutions you've provided. So what doesn't work, and then maybe what does work?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. And although our team does support all regions, Texas is a big focus of ours, and we find that the Texas market is a little more mature, right? You have people who are a little more aware of choice and the products and services that retail electricity providers can offer. And so, within this market, we find that there's a wide range of, customer preferences. We might, as on the NRG side, some of us just nerd out about usage data, or nerd out about, DR, the next, big thing. And we find that there are some folks in the market, some customers and prospects who actually are digging it too, right? People who are very engaged. They want a deep level of insights, about their usage, or they want that they're seeking out the next best, electricity product structure, or the next best non-commodity product that we might offer, or they might be really engaged in demand response and have all the IoT and smart home tech, embedded within their house. And so, some of those folks, really just kind of, buy in to what we offer, from the get-go. And, we can really learn a lot from them and, use them as like a testing ground. But we also learned that, there are some folks who, just don't care. Like, they're aware that we offer these products and services. They, they kind of get it. They get it. They understand. Yeah, sure. You have a partnership with Google for, smart home devices, but honestly, I don't have the time, right? I have the money, I could invest it, but there's a lot of other things I'd rather be, doing, like playing golf on the weekends. And I'm not really someone who's that cared about, managing my budget. I can pay my bill. You're just a utility. I'm just going to move on. And then there's another segment, right, that, probably, is less likely to invest in that tech. They might not be able to afford it. And they just, you have a lot of other stuff going on. And their relationship with, one of our brands is more of a, I'm having to pay this bill every month. I'm struggling. I might need some deferred payment plans or, payment assistance options. And things like smart home tech or energy efficiency solutions are really not top of mind. They actually do start to come in handy, especially when, we help find customers who are experiencing things like bill shock, right? And we identify, probably issues with their HVAC, right? Or, wow, something is breaking on the heating element for your electric heater. And in those instances, for those types of customers, like energy saving solutions actually are quite appealing. Like, they might be really busy, but as soon as their bill gets really high and their usage is skyrocketing and they don't know what's happening, that's when some of those solutions become very appealing. And then people are willing to have that conversation with us, willing to let our skilled technicians come out and, perform an audit on their home or help, them tune up the AC or the heater. And so, what we've learned, through the different programs we've launched is we just have a very heterogeneous, market in Texas. Of course, some consumers are super well educated and mature, and they really are digging, the deregulated space and the ability to choose and switch providers and pick the right plan for their lifestyle. And there's some folks on the other end of the spectrum, right, who might not even be aware that they could switch, and they've still been with the same utility they've been with, since, prior to deregulation in 2002.
Well, so a lot of what you're saying is seems to be around meeting the customer where they're at, right? You have some customers who are really interested in better understanding all the data, the analytics. They want the charts, the graphs. They want the amount of money they've saved. And then there's some people who maybe never will pay attention, no matter what happens, or what factors might be impacting them. We also know that other services that can get offered to customers can help create that stickiness, can help add to levels of engagement. And so at Parks Associates, of course, we also study the home security and home automation part of the house. And we're seeing quite an overlap here in the idea of utility services and security services. So is there anything that you might be able to touch on in regards to the security side and how that may be beneficial, maybe bundling these things together as a way to help really further educate customers?
Yeah, good point. Reliant Energy specifically has a history of, offering, security in addition to electricity to their customers. And what we've learned over the past few years of that strategy, it seems to be a very sticky product. Reliant, for example, does offer other, non-commodity products and services. Reliant, as well as other brands, try to cross-serve customers and, create more value from them. But one thing that really stands out is home security. And I think, if you think about, when do people, meeting people where they are, right? Again, when are folks likely to think about their electricity provider? Well, a lot of times when you're moving, right? You're moving to a new house, you move into an apartment. that's when you really have to make a choice, right? And you're thinking, okay, what are the competitor, the reps I could choose from, or the prices, the products? And about that same time, you might be considering a security system. Like, let's say you're moving from an apartment, you're buying your first home. The house may not come with a security system, and you're probably trying to think, how do I get my internet, my security, my electricity all set up? And what we find is that we can really meet, people where they are by offering them not only electricity, but also security bundled together, when people are at that stage in their lives. And what we found is that whenever we kind of, find the right person, and we bundle those products, those customers end up, sticking around a lot longer. Those customers tend to be very bought into the value proposition. They can see the relationship between electricity and security, and they can also, we can give them a bit of a discount, right? And show that, hey, if you take both of these products from us, we might give you a little bit of a lower rate. And that really strongly encourages customers to renew their electricity contract and keep their security system, especially, systems that, we have to, help set up. And there's a lot of upfront labor involved. I feel like it's harder for someone to want to switch away, quickly whenever they've kind of put up that upfront investment, right? To, bundle their electricity and security together. I think the hardest problem, I guess the biggest opportunity, I should say, with, bundling electricity and security is that, there's a lot of folks, it seems like, who just aren't, necessarily always itching to get a new security system, right? Like some people already have one, right? Or it's not top of mind, or, they're not, necessarily moving and need one at their point in their lives. And so I think the biggest issue we've had is just kind of growing, and scaling up that program. Whenever it happens and we sell it to someone, it works, but it's a bit harder to try to quickly scale that up. Whereas, electricity, you can convince someone to switch at any time, and it's not a lot of effort. You can call, you can go online, switch providers, get a better product, and you're good. But when it comes to security, it definitely is a bit more labor intensive, and folks are a little more reluctant to just quickly, switch from one system to another or put a new system in, while they're already kind of in their house and they feel, secure enough. Like they don't really have that strong desire to switch and, put a security system in just because Reliant may offer a bundle at a slightly lower rate.
Yeah, and there certainly are different value propositions there with that technology, but something we are seeing that's showing up on energy and security and really bringing that vision of whole home closer together. But let's keep talking about demand response and engagement. So tell me, how are you all explaining this demand response to consumers? And is there anything in particular on the messaging that is really hitting things home? And does this ultimately come down to cost, or is there something else beyond, just the price savings, the cost savings that you're really pushing forward? Yeah,
that's a fair question. So fortunately, we've had some years of being able to test things and learn, from how customers respond to NRG's different demand response offerings. As just quick context is that, NRG has a few brands, and a few brands offer, DR services. Some are very tech intensive, you have a thermostat at your house and you allow NRG to automatically control it, from our desk, right? That's kind of the fully, most involved, Nest, partnership that we have. We also have like a DIY program where, customers are asked to, manually or, adjust the thermostat on their own, right? They could use any thermostat. And then we also have, just conservation emails that go out whenever, ERCOT, calls for conservation, we might just email customers and ask them, to, reduce the strain on the grid. And so, what we found is that, generally what's most effective is providing a financial incentive to the customer to encourage them to, shave their peak. And so, whether it's the fully embedded Nest program or the DIY program, what we've observed is that, those programs have a much stronger causal effect on demand reduction than just a simple email that asks, customers to reduce their consumption without, just to help the grid, right? There's some customers, of course, who find that message compelling, and it does make, somewhat of a difference, right? If we just say, hey, the grid is pretty stressed, we could use your help. just, adjust your thermostat this afternoon, or, delay, doing your laundry until later tonight. That helps. But it's not as effective as like, of course, paying the customer. Money talks, right? If we give someone, a credit on their account, or, lower energy charge, and if they do shave their peak, then customers are much more willing to, engage and respond. It could be the messaging, it could be the financial incentive. We're still learning. We find that, for our, I guess, green-minded folks, if we speak to things like, hey, when the grid is, really stressed and, peak demand is super high, we might, the grid is using a relatively higher amount of, fossil fuels, to create electricity. And some customers, find that message very compelling, and that convinces them to want to shave their peak. But I think, roughly speaking, the most effective, I guess, way to get that we've seen to get people to shave their peak is with some sort of financial incentive.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, changing getting people to change their behaviors, we know is a really challenging thing to do. And somebody on the previous panel mentioned, this idea of engagement and having really the technology just make things happen where you don't require the consumer to do anything, right? And I think that's where that control opportunity comes in with connectivity and data and usage, which brings me to a question from our audience. So let me get this quick question in. What about the utilities having access to data and using this to control the systems inside the home to offer time of use rates or limit energy use on the grid? So what's the view of that data set that there's access to through some of these devices?
Right. So we do have experience getting access to, thermostat devices, right? We don't have a lot of access to additional, devices where we can actually control, the load, created from them. When it comes to, the thermostats, it definitely gives us a lot of insights and a lot of capabilities to improve customer experience, as well as, improve our hedging position. Yeah, I would say that, generally when it comes to, home, I guess, data, really we can still make a lot of use of just 15-minute interval usage data from the home's meter, right? And so we can still, quickly learn, how much of a home's electricity is used by EVs or HVAC, using non-intrusive, load monitoring research. And we can also, just watch people's shape and see like, hey, here's someone who's really peaky, right? And very high cost to serve. Here's another customer who, they enrolled on a TOU plan, and that we really like that. But all of a sudden, COVID broke out, for example, and everyone started working from home, and the kids came home and they were doing school from home. And, a customer's, load profile may have shifted drastically. That created, some bill shock and customer dissatisfaction. So, even though we do just mostly have access to, smart thermostat devices for our customers, we're still able to like provide a lot of, unique services and, better offers for folks based on 15-minute interval usage from the whole home meter alone.
Okay, great. To dive deeper into some of these areas like EVs and solar panels and the pricing programs that can come with those, additions onto a home. How do consumers view these different programs? Is there a good uptake? Is there, can you share about what you see when people are switching? Is there anything that you can understand from all the data that this is why they switched? And does it still all come down to money? It does sound like money is a big part of it here in getting people engaged, with incentives, credits, financial something. So curious on the overall view of electric vehicles, the solar panels, and then the pricing programs that go with them.
Right. No, it's a good question. I think, when it comes to stuff like EV plans, solar plans, even like DR incentives, it seems like folks are just want to benefit, or I guess collect some of the benefit that they're giving back to NRG and the grid, right? Because they know that folks who are really engaged in DR or EV or rooftop solar, they have a better understanding of like, hey, I'm actually like reducing I'm improving grid resiliency and reliability. I'm reducing stress on the grid. I might be like contributing to less fossil fuels being burned, right, by reducing my consumption during these afternoon peaky periods. And I feel like those folks are rightfully so, asking for a cut of the revenue or extra savings that NRG and the grid might be collecting. And so I think that's one reason perhaps why folks are a little more interested in the financial incentives associated with these programs, in addition to just it being the right thing. But I think what we've learned in terms of EV services, rooftop solar services in particular, is that I think folks are again, especially on the EV side, the TOU stuff is definitely interesting, especially if you can give folks an incentive to charge at night. It's a lot cheaper. It's pretty easy for folks to schedule their EV to charge at night. That is appealing to some folks. But what we found is that there's quite a few folks who drive EVs and just still search for the cheapest rate possible, right? Like maybe it's just a vanilla product, fixed rate. There's no TOU component. Some EV drivers have realized it's just a lot easier. You're going to get a lower monthly bill if you pick like the basic plan rather than a TOU plan, and it allows them more flexibility to charge, right? If you need to charge during the daytime at home really quick, you can do that without being stressed out about your high daytime energy charge. And when it comes to rooftop solar, I think one thing that's really been made well known to us is that customers demand like uncapped versions of rooftop solar product structures, right? So if I am have rooftop solar panels on my house and I in a billing cycle I generate more than I consume, I should get that benefit, right? I should get excess credits on my account and be able to roll those over to future months. What we found from, I guess, what we've seen in the market is that when products are structured in a way to, cap those benefits and say, okay, I don't care if you generated more than you use this month. We're going to kind of wipe the slate clean this month and kind of reset the clock next month. That seems to be very unpopular and something that's not, really good for the customer or the company over the long term.
Okay, great. Really interesting comments there. I do have a question that came in from the audience, and we just have a few more minutes. So let's see if we can get this question in, and then maybe one last question from me. So from our audience, can we develop smart devices and systems that tie together to try and hit monthly energy goals for rural customers at lower incomes? Needs to be a simple, all-inclusive package.
Yeah, I think it's possible. When I think of that particular customer segment, it would need to be, really focused on, things like electric heating, load in the winter. We find that folks who are living in more rural areas, for example, they're much less likely to be hooked up to a gas line and be using gas heating. And those folks, definitely, they're kind of hit double whammy, right? Summertime cooling demand load, a wintertime heating demand load. And, if we kind of created some sort of solution, like all-encompassing, hardware or smart device solution, we would definitely need to solve for kind of like both seasons, summer and winter, to help them get through both. And so, it's definitely possible. It would just need to be something that would be more focused on like helping them relieve the pressure on their bill, right? Whether it's helping create a more smooth bill structure so that their bill doesn't fluctuate big time throughout the summer and winter seasons. Or, maybe it would require a little bit of assistance from, the technology provider to help them install it and make it seamless. And so it's one less thing they need to worry about, because we do find with folks in that segment, they tend to be overwhelmed, right? They just have a lot of other stuff going on. Of course, they want to find ways to reduce, their bill, right, and not have to pay as much. But it's just one of those things that it's really hard to, for them to find time, right, to invest in some smart home tech to, make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are lots of great innovations out there being developed, and lots of industry leaders working on these new next generation solutions coming. We have 1 minute for you to summarize your short and long-term vision of the home energy management market. So let me turn it back to you and see if you can sum it up for us in what this grand vision is, and how this might unfold here in the short and long term. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So short term, I could see still a lot of folks testing and learning, different ideas a little more disparately, especially for folks who or the consumer segment that's a little more engaged, technologically and wants to make that investment in, smart home tech, who kind of already has bought into that, and really focused on that segment. I think over the long term, I could see this, really rolling out and scaling to a much wider audience, especially if it's more seamless and it doesn't require as much upfront knowledge about how things work. And I could see it really resonating with more segments if you're able to explain how people can actually make money, right, based on these home energy solutions. It's not as much about just reducing your load or your stress on the grid, but also how might I be empowered to sell my power back to the grid? How can I profit from these markets? And so I could definitely see as things like Robinhood, right, over the past few years took off, where people could trade stocks and assets and crypto from their phone. I feel like over the long term, with the assistance of like home energy management solutions, it seems like there's a possibility that folks will be empowered to like sell the power that they're generating for their home back to the grid, with the whole virtual power plant concept.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we heard those same kind of thoughts from Andrew at CPS Energy, talking about really a complete market transformation coming in the next 15 to 20 years, where, the consumer is now in the marketplace, and a lot of dynamics going on there that's going to lead up to that. So, Nathan, thank you again so much for taking the time to join us today and sharing your words of wisdom. I look forward to seeing you in person and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Great. So thank you. And we will be right back. Give us just a minute until our next session.
Great. We're excited to get going with our next panel. Very excited to hear all of the great insights so far that we've heard already today, and especially that session with Nathan from NRG and Elizabeth. I'm Jennifer Kent. I'm Vice President of Research with Parks Associates, and our next topic that we're diving into is looking at energy platforms and the opportunities in the smart apartment and multifamily residence space. Over the past 4 years, we've seen pretty incredible growth of connected devices in households across the US, but particularly among residents and multifamily units. So as of Q4 2021, 41% of MDU residents reported using smart home devices, which is actually higher than single-family home residents. And when we talk to property managers, so we survey consumers, of course, but we've also surveyed MDU property owners and operators and property managers to understand the technologies that they're using in common areas, in the units, why they're using that type of technology, especially connected devices. And smart devices with major implications for energy consumption lead the pack in the multifamily space. So in surveying these multifamily property owner operators, we found that more than 50% of MDU property managers reported having internet-connected lighting devices and lighting systems in residential units on their largest properties. Smart thermostats follow smart lighting and appliances, with about 39% reporting having smart thermostats installed in resident units. Now, common areas, if you look at common areas, the device mix shifts a little. Smart cameras are the top connected device types in MDU common areas, looking for sort of safety and security, of course, value proposition, followed by smart lighting, and then smoke detectors and smart parking sensors. Now, MDU owner operators naturally find the ability of smart energy products and energy management systems to save on energy costs highly attractive. 72% want smart thermostats so that they can automatically adjust temperature in unoccupied units to save energy. And a similar percentage find smart lighting solutions appealing for really the same reason. 2/3 also find it highly appealing to use smart plugs to monitor energy consumption and remotely turn on and off those appliances and other devices that are plugged into the smart outlets and the smart plugs. But the appeal of today's smart products and platforms do go beyond energy savings. We know that some of the greatest appeal of connected systems comes down to appliance maintenance, particularly around HVAC systems. 75% of MDU owners say the ability for smart thermostats to monitor HVAC systems to prevent major emergencies is highly appealing. 68% want to be able to remotely monitor the temperature in unoccupied units in order to prevent pipes from bursting in the winter. So there can be real impacts to the bottom line beyond energy savings for MDUs deploying these solutions. Also, increasingly, we see attractive opportunities for MDUs to generate new revenue, whether through participating in solar or other demand response programs, or installing EV charging to attract residents and generate charging fees. The business models and utility programs are really still evolving in these areas, and we'll talk today about all of the benefits of smart energy solutions in this market. So on this panel, we'll hear from industry-leading speakers on the various factors driving interest in smart energy solutions in the multifamily market. We'll also discuss how utilities should be thinking about the MDU space for demand response programs. From a scale perspective, is there greater bang for your buck in calling events with MDUs for grid flexibility? And we'll also look at resident demand for EV charging and the business models for property owners evaluating the attractiveness of offering EV charging at their properties. So with that, I'd love to invite my panelists in this afternoon, invite them to tell us a little bit about themselves and about their organizations, then we'll dive into the discussion. And first up, I'm excited to introduce Håkan Ludvigsson, who's the CEO and founder of Elike AB. Håkan, thanks for being here today. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and your organization.
Great. Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. Really good to be here. I'm Håkan from Elike, and we're a B2B SaaS company. We're helping utilities and other energy service providers to build digital products that their customers really love and that they really value and use every day. So what that means is we're at Elike, we're really good at interpreting data from smart meters. So we pair that data with information from the energy market, from weather forecasts, to really figure out what's going on in the home and provide these building blocks that our clients are embedding in their products to help really sort of inspire and empower customers to start that journey towards net zero. So we're about 50 people, working from London in the UK and in Sweden, with clients primarily in Europe, but in a couple other places as well. So typically, what these kind of building blocks that we provide, what they are is they help consumers understand how they're using energy, where it's being wasted, and really helps coaching them to a lower bill with behavioral advice, with recommendations for upgrades that they can make to their homes, and with functionality to automate some of that energy usage with respect to electric vehicles and smart heating cooling. Yeah, really good to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Fantastic. Glad to have you. I'm certainly welcome that European perspective as well. That really also helps shape our understanding of what's happening in the US and globally. I'm so very interested in your insights today. Next, we have Advait Katarki, who's the Business Development Manager for Connected Solutions and EV Charging Infrastructure with Eaton. Welcome. Tell us a little bit more about your role at Eaton.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. Excited to be here. Part of this panel is such an important discussion, right? So, again, Advait Katarki, I lead business development for Eaton. Who is Eaton, right? We are a global efficient power management company. We help our customers solve complex power management problems, and we do that across various sectors, right? So, they have airplanes, we have components that go into airplanes. So, as more and more of those, airplanes are electrified, we are helping our customers there. If you think of our components from an onboard charger to power distribution units on cars as well as trucks, so we are helping our customers electrify their vehicles over there. And then more relevant from this conversation standpoint, right? Building customers. So as buildings are getting more electrified, as people are adding more solar, storage, EV charging, we are coming out with technology. We have technologies that we work with customers today, both utilities, storage and solar OEMs, as well as home builders, to really kind of help with that energy transition. And some of the things that we see from a residential standpoint, for this particular discussion is, the 2 or 3 trends that we see that consumers are getting impacted by. And the first one is EV adoption. So when you think of all the data that suggests that 80% of charging is going to happen at home, that's a big load that didn't exist inside the home when a lot of these homes were built, right? So how do we help our customers manage that effectively through smart charging, make sure the charging is beneficial for the grid, as well as solutions like our smart load center and smart vehicles that do flexible load management, really improve and help our customers utilize their solar and storage assets that they're investing in, and also provide some new advanced insights and control behind the meter for balancing the grid more effectively for you. So really eager and excited for this discussion.
Now, Advait, thank you very much for that introduction. We're actually having a little bit of trouble with your audio, though. It sounds a little warbled. So our team has some instructions for you to maybe try a different microphone if you can, just to make sure that we're hearing your perspective really clearly. But thank you very much for being here, and we'll bring you back into the discussion in just a few minutes. So next up, we have Blake Miller. Blake's the founder and CEO of Homebase. Blake, tell us a little bit more about yourself and about Homebase.
Hey everybody, I'm Blake Miller, founder of Homebase. We're based in Kansas City. We're a team of about 70 people changing the future of living in connected buildings. We're an internet service provider and a connected building platform that focuses on helping property owners make their building future ready and a great place to live. But more importantly, help them generate revenue first through their property without having to rely on raising rents, and allow the technology to be able to help them capture data and make their buildings more efficient, both with energy efficiencies as well as property management efficiencies, ultimately making their buildings more valuable as well. So I'm excited to be here today and talk about how connectivity and smart building technology really will help energy management in the future.
Fantastic. Great to have you, Blake. Next up, we have Wani Park, who's the CEO of Zen Ecosystems. Hi, Wani. Welcome back. Glad to have you on our session today. Tell us a little bit more about Zen Ecosystems.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everybody. So Wani Park, Zen Ecosystems. We're based in Newport Beach, California. Just a little bit about us. We basically provide a platform for multifamily as well as just commercial entities in regards to sustainability. That basically falls into 3 primary silos, as you can kind of see on the screen here. The first one is hardware. So we have our own proprietary thermostat, as well as sensors that we actually deploy for both apartments as well as common area. The second piece is the software. So we have a SaaS platform that does a lot of the management, the reporting, controls, things like that. And then the last piece is actually the marketplace, which is really where we actually bring in third parties to do things like demand response, as well as community solar and other sustainability focused services. And, you know, really the intent is to sort of manage costs on the energy side, to boost the use of renewables and just have a better score in terms of carbon neutrality. And then the last piece is to drive revenue. There's opportunities to drive revenue through our marketplace. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks, Swani. We also have Carol Schmidt, who's the Chief Evangelist for ESG and Energy at RealPage. Hi, Carol.
Hey, good day. Hi, everybody. So I work for RealPage, have been here about a year, but prior to that, I was doing a lot of work on the IoT side. So hearing about the things like smart circuit breakers and being able to integrate what we're doing with EV charging and load shifting at the multifamily level. I just have to say that RealPage is one of the world's top software companies focused on multifamily and real estate. And that with that integration and what we look at the business intelligence. So asset managers, as well as the owner operators, have a good view of what's going on at their properties, as well as the people that have to manage it day to day. So when we talk about things like sustainability and ESG, it's really looking at the entire operation and how to make it more effective. So when it comes to anything to deal with connected devices and where things are going, it's pretty important that we can be able to not only make it effective today, but also make it truly connected so that that control plane works at the same time as you're collecting that data and putting it to use across the organization, which includes your major investors. So it's a pretty big topic, and looking forward to talking more.
Wonderful. Now, before we dive in, Advait, I'd love to have you come on in and test your new microphone. I know you were able to. Oh,
is this better now?
Very, very clearly. So if you wouldn't mind, why don't you just give us I'm going to go backwards here. And why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your company again? I do think it was a little warbled, and so people can really understand Eaton and where you fit there.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Eaton, we are a global company, again, focusing on power management, right? And we do that across various sectors, from airplanes as EVs are coming to market. You know, we are working with vehicle OEMs to kind of help them through that journey. But really, for this particular panel, right, we do a lot of stuff around building electrification. So as people are electrifying, you know, their homes and buildings, you know, swapping out gas appliances for electric, they're adding EV charging, they're adding, you know, solar and storage. You know, we have solutions around smart load center, smart breakers, smart EV charging, through which we are helping them manage through that transition. We do a lot of work with different utilities, and through technology like smart breakers, right, we are providing advanced insights and, you know, increased level of control behind the meter from a demand response standpoint, and really managing that modern bidirectional grid that we're working towards in a more effective manner. So again, you know, it's an exciting topic, and yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
Wonderful. So let's go ahead and dive in while I advance a little here. Okay, so one thing that we heard earlier in the session, so the very first session today was focused more on the residential, you know, consumer point of view. And I think it was Jay from Landis & Gyr mentioned, you know, the industrial and commercial side tends to get it. They see the economics to an extent, right, in a way that the consumers don't, who really need to be engaged better. So I would love to start there and understand, you know, what drives interest in smart energy solutions in the MDU space. Is it all about energy savings? Is it whole building operation? Is it the environmental and sustainability goals, right? What are you seeing as some of the most important drivers of interest in this space? Love to start with Wani there, and then I'll go to Håkan.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, it's just the P&L, right? It's just, you know, costs, revenue, things like that. But I think over the last couple of years, there's been a heightened interest in it, only in the sense that, you know, the actual costs have gone up. And like, you know, when you look at multifamily, but also just the commercial sector, there's been a lot of work from home. So consumption's going up and things like that. And there's no like there aren't too many like light lift ways to sort of manage that. And what we've seen is from an energy management perspective, demand response, other incentives from different utility commissions by state, the ability to extract value there is kind of complicated, right? So you almost need like a shepherd to really kind of guide you through that. And, I think in terms of the ability to do that, we've seen some great progress in the space. And so we implement that. And I think once that's done, you sort of demystify it, and then you can just create a template and just drop it in, right? It's actually pretty repeatable. So.
Yeah, fantastic. And Håkan, to you, before I come to you actually for your thoughts on this, we did ask a very similar question in our polling to the audience. So if you haven't already answered that poll, go ahead, do so now, because I'm about to read out the responses. So Håkan, tell us a little bit more about, what's driving interest among the multifamily type properties in smart energy solutions from your point of view.
Yeah, it's a great question, really, because I think from a resident point of view, I think looking back a couple of years, the interest was relatively low. So people spend less at average on their energy bills if they live in multifamily, and but that's changing now. So certainly in Europe, where energy prices have really skyrocketed over the past, I would say, 9-10 months, we're seeing that interest, which we had in single family homes, we're seeing that really pick up for all consumers, really. So from residential side, I think that's a driver which is new and picking up a lot of speed. Maybe from the sort of property company side, we have the whole ESG topic. So ESG goals, regulation tied to ESG goals, and in Europe we're seeing all this pressure from the financial sector on. So now, like as of this year, banks have to report on how green their mortgages are, like for every single mortgage that they have, from reporting point of view. So there's a huge push and drive towards making just sustainability happen on the individual household level. I think those are couple of things that I think are picking up now.
Just to follow up on that last point, which I think is really interesting, are the financial organizations and the properties who are looking to report back, right, on how green their properties are, their mortgages or their portfolios are, right? I imagine that there is a real need for data and reporting to be able to even assess that and to know what that is. And so is that a space that you play? And can you tell us a little bit about how organizations are looking to even assess that for themselves?
Yeah, so it's pretty, I think for banks, certainly are probably the sector that's getting the most heat from regulators here. So they're really looking at, they need to report on every single household. So where we can help them, and in our partnerships with utilities, we can help them to better understand on a household level what is the actual energy consumption and what was the carbon or greenhouse gas emission factors at the different times of the day. So they actually have to go to that level over time and make that reporting happen. But at the same time, these banks are also worried about how these properties, the property value for poor energy efficiency households, which also includes multifamily housing here. So in the UK here, every single flat will have its own heating system. So you can have a heat pump in one flat, and the next flat can have a gas boiler. And this is a bit of a weird situation, but it's really affecting the property values, and the banks are seeing this as a big risk going forward. So it's kind of it is sort of the back end side of what's going on in the market, but I think it will have some real implications on things like mortgages.
Yeah, interesting. So, Blake and Carol, to you both, you're seeing the energy management play in multifamily from kind of a wider perspective, right? And how energy sits within other prop tech or IoT type value propositions. Carol, or Blake first, and then Carol, can you tell us a little bit about how energy kind of stacks up against some of these other value propositions and what multifamily owner operators are thinking about when they're looking for, smart solutions to bring onto their properties. So Blake first, then I'll go to Carol.
Carol, go ahead, actually.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Carol, go ahead.
All right. Well, that's a big topic, I guess. But I wanted to pick up on a couple of things that the previous speakers had said. First off, when you look at green loans and you look at financing of different properties, that the fact that our customers are telling us that when they put these new technologies in place that help them monitor on a regular basis, as well place the controls, not just in the common areas, but also across the residential areas, and do it in a way that they can aggregate the data and take out the PII, which allows them to then make whole building choices. They have to, one, be able to have reliable internet. This sounds like table stakes to us, but the fact that a lot of people buy smart thermostats but don't actually connect and use the data because they are not integrating them and managing them themselves. They provide it to the residents with their own Wi-Fi, but they can't control it external to that. The second part is that when we're talking about green loans or even buying and selling properties, being able to have access to that data and how much emissions reductions you're able to do, what you're doing to control usage and better operate your properties, increases the valuations of the properties, but it also shows a path to where you need to make change. You can compare properties and like properties and be able to say at an analytics side, you know, that property looks exactly like the one that's, you know, 2 streets over, yet it's performing far lower in the strategy. So, and it's not just for energy, but it's waste and water as well. So if you can figure out how to be able to focus on the operations, focus on those key KPIs, that's really going to change it all. And it's also going to be able to help you shave when you're doing your mortgages. You know, we had one customer that just said they shaved 50 basis points just simply by being able to prove that this is a focus of that property. That kind of understanding of the valuation and relationships of these types of technologies is really coming to the fore now. And I would say it's ESG that's driving it, because now you've got the investors invested in what's going on at the property.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting, and taking a very different view of where the value is here, right? So it's not just savings; there's a value to the property, and then kind of a next step is there actually revenue that I can generate off of on top of some of these smart solutions? So Blake, I know that that's something that you're focused on at Homebase. So tell us a little bit about kind of the wider opportunity here.
Yeah, you know, Carol touched on a lot of really great points, and one of the last things she talked on with the some of the new incentives with ESG folks being able to earn, you know, lower basis points on some of their mortgages. Those are new incentives that finally people are able to use to start to underwrite the capital investment that it takes to put all of these smart things and all the connectivity in their buildings, versus just doing the status quo and flipping these buildings over and over and over again, you know, arbitraging cap rates and some of these things, while just trying to raise rents over and over and over again. And so that was something that we saw early on, was we had to figure out, how are we going to connect all of these devices? How are we going to help revenue generation first, while the technology collects data that helps will help inform the energy management solutions of the building, that will help make the building more efficient. All of which things that will take time. It takes, you know, 4 seasons just to capture energy from how a building operates after it gets built. So that's going to take time, but that's hard to underwrite before there have been more incentives, people looking at ESG type of investments. And so when you said, hey, we want to spend, you know, maybe $1,000 per door to invest in all the smart technology, it's going to make all the building more efficient. Well, on some levels, people don't care because the resident is the one that's paying for the energy. And so they don't necessarily see, you know, those cost savings for themselves unless they can raise their rents. And, you know, sometimes the residents might not care for that, and rents are at all-time highs. So what Homebase focused on was connectivity for the entire building. We're going to provide a way to connect all these devices so you don't have to figure it out or use cellular-based hubs. And then you can use that same investment of that connectivity platform, the community Wi-Fi throughout the entire community and resell that Wi-Fi to the residents. And it's a different share of your residents' wallet. You're capturing, not raising or attaching it to the rent. And this now gives you something that you can underwrite to the bank. You're going to know that you're going to capture around $50 a month in NOI that frankly pays for all of the other smart things that you're going to put into the building. That actually increases the value of the building as well, and then gives you now and buys you time for your building to become more energy efficient, to get the data to make it so. And one of the coolest things that we're starting to see is allowing people to be able to manage more units with their current team.
So Blake, and to the group here, I'm going to read out some of the results of the poll. We asked, what is driving interest in smart energy solutions among multifamily? The number one result, 50% said cost savings on energy bills, right? Going to Wani's great point when he started off the session here. At the lower end, generating revenue through services, right? So Blake, do you feel like you're at the very beginning of a start? Are property managers thinking this way naturally, or is it a pretty new way of for them to understand, what can be done with prop tech and energy type solutions?
I think people are always thinking about how do we make more revenue inside their building, but I think what they're recognizing is that the smart stuff isn't about raising your rents, because the smart thermostat or smart light switches or all these things are kind of becoming like granite countertops and stainless steel. It's table stakes now. So that does not matter. What your residents want, and I think what everybody is going to see as rents are at all-time highs, and you're starting to see that, is people just expect more. And so I think some of the things that we're starting to see ourselves is, replacing filters in a building, for example, is actually a pretty big supply chain management issue for building owners. For residents, it's kind of a pain in the butt. And if it gets done, it maybe happens like once a year or at the turn or something like that. But what you can start to do is actually change it based off of the runtime of a thermostat. So every 300 hours, instead of changing it once every at the turn, you change 30 thermostats in a 200 unit building that are all within a threshold to be able to get it replaced. And it sends a notification to the residents and asks them if they'd like to be able to upgrade to a more hypoallergenic filter. Other revenue generating things that are all something that is going to extend the life of the HVAC systems, be more energy efficient for the residents themselves, and really kind of pull together, saving their maintenance team a lot of time by managing that entire supply chain. So there's a lot of these new ways of managing or new ways of automating your building and certain tasks. You're not going to automate the whole building. You're going to automate certain things using all of this data.
Mm-hmm. Well, Advait, I'd love to come to you to understand, from you and Eaton's point of view, the opportunity around EV charging in the multifamily space, because I do think this is a really important topic and really interesting opportunity. And is love to understand a little bit more about where the opportunity is for the property owner and manager, as far as, is it attracting residents, generating a revenue share there, right? Tell us a little bit more about how this is looking in the multifamily space.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we're seeing, right, if you want to drive adoption of EVs, a key area for that is urban areas where there's like meter density. And typically it's going to be the demographic that's renting a lot these days, right? So multifamily have a key role in terms of helping us drive that EV adoption. So again, we're seeing a lot of interest from there. I think from a property owner standpoint, it's an opportunity for them to differentiate their property from maybe, a property that doesn't have that. It allows them to attract that desirable set of customers, right? Customers who value, living the green way. They don't mind paying slightly higher rent. So again, it certainly helps them drive some higher rents. It certainly helps them drive, higher value of their property. And then from a consumer standpoint or from a renter standpoint, again, driving electric reduces their dependence on gasoline. And more often than not, that can represent a significant amount of cost savings for them from a day-to-day standpoint. And I think developers get it, right? About more than 50% of the multifamily projects that we're doing, we're seeing, EV charging being added to that. Now, a portion of that is legislation or regulation, things like right to charge, which is kind of forcing the developers to add these kind of amenities. But I also feel like developers are seeing a value in it, right? And I think utilities have a key role to play here. Utilities certainly, they are encouraging EV adoption. I think they understand that multifamily is a potential big problem that could either stop EV adoption, or if they do it the right way, that could really supercharge EV adoption. So we're seeing more and more utilities getting engaged over there. They have some really innovative programs as well as financial incentives for developers to incorporate EV charging. So yeah, I mean, we kind of talked a little bit about table stakes, right? Where we see the industry going probably in a year or two, along with other amenities. We just see that EV charging is quickly going to be a table stakes from an amenity standpoint.
Now, how does that differ between new builds and property development that's happening right now versus established properties who are looking to, upgrade and retrofit and bring in chargers to their properties after development?
Yeah, I would say, certainly incorporating some of those things from a charging standpoint is much easier doing it up front, because, you can plan for your energy consumption, you can get the right size of transformer from the utility. So it's certainly much easier. But then we're also seeing, existing properties looking to add those kind of solutions. So we are working on solutions that can do load management, right? That are a lot more scalable. So we have EV chargers that you can deploy in a panel board or a busway. So you may start out with 3 or 4 chargers today, and then a year down the line, you want to add more. So we have some solutions that can make it cost effective for you to do that. Also, from a load management standpoint, right? EVs, if you look at pretty much every EV charger, somewhere between 7 kW or 11 kW. If you add 6, that's a lot more load than maybe the building was designed to handle. So again, leveraging software managed controls over there. We are deploying energy storage in a lot of these facilities to really buffer, because you're just going to be charging a lot of the EVs during certain periods of the day. So you don't always need to go back to the utility and increasing the size of pipe, right? In figurative terms, to get that additional capacity back. So again, just to summarize that, it's a lot more easier to incorporate that from a new build standpoint. But even for brownfield, right, we are developing some solutions that really make it easy from a utility perspective as well as the developer perspective to add that.
So I'd love to go back to you here, Advait, for our sort of next question, which is flipping to the utility point of view, right? And what you see as the opportunity for utilities to really engage multifamily owner operators as we see more of these properties take on smart energy management solutions and EV charging. What's the opportunity there for engaging for demand response programs, or other types of programs?
Yeah, and I would say, like, traditionally it's been challenging for the utility just because there are multiple stakeholders involved, right? From a single family standpoint, there's one stakeholder, you get that person convinced and you can move on. But I think as more and more of these facilities become smart, I think Blake talked a lot about, potentially deploying Wi-Fi across the whole building. So now you have not just ways to control the units, but also being able to kind of reduce waste in the common areas. If you have connectivity for those smart devices, I think that's going to increase the opportunities that utilities have. And I think also from a utility, the feedback that we're getting is, they're seeing a lot more success when they come up with solutions that don't impact the consumer as much. So reducing the redundant pieces of equipment inside a unit, right? Again, a consumer is paying for the space inside the unit. So you don't want to be taking up any more space than you need it. And again, going back to our smart breakers, right? Every single circuit needs a breaker. So, why not leverage that footprint, add more communication, add more control to now enable demand response? So I think some of those technologies are taking off. And then another thing that we're seeing is, occupancy-based control, right? So if a unit is not occupied at that particular level, and if there's load going on, then turn those load off. So again, the utility benefits from that because they're getting capacity back from a grid perspective. The apartment dweller benefits from it because you're helping them save energy while really not impacting their day-to-day life.
Yeah, absolutely. Håkan, I'd love to come to you there also for your perspective in working with utilities and helping them understand what the opportunity is in the multifamily space. And you're actually muted right now, so you might need to unmute yourself. There we go.
Yeah. So I would say, firstly, EVs is probably going to be a big one. So the trick is how to manage that with shared parking spaces and shared chargers. I think that's a clear opportunity. I think if we're getting more smart thermostats, that's another one that's shifting. And here in Europe, where we're getting rid of our dependency on gas, especially these days, even more rapidly. We're seeing more and more electrical heating come into multifamily housing, and that's a good opportunity. So they're talking now about adding bigger accumulator tanks so that in the winter we can like heat up a lot of water in the nighttime, and in order to be able to use more flexible use your energy in more flexible ways. So I think there's definitely the direct demand response programs is one way to reach customers. The other one is through time of use tariffs, and we're seeing more and more retailers try out dynamic tariffs that are actually variable with basically a new price every hour of every day. So which is quite interesting. And then maybe the third thing is so even if we want to address those customers who don't necessarily pay their own energy bill, then this is just tying on to something that Nathan from Energy said in the previous segment. So actually customers, so some part of customers are actually willing to do some load shifting or change their behavior just to lower their carbon footprint. So that's also another way to reach some and grow of customers as well.
So, many of you are sitting, are vendors in the sense that with a role to play in maybe connecting the utility or with the multifamily, or could work with utilities in different ways with different utility programs and policies. I'd love to understand a little bit better, what are the challenges in working with utilities today? Carol, maybe I'll come to you here. And, how can the market move forward maybe even more quickly or at scale when you think about, how utilities work today and kind of what you need from them to move forward here?
Yeah. So full disclosure, I came to RealPage from one of the US's largest renewables companies and utilities. So I've gotten to have great respect for a couple of things. One is whole building data. If you don't have access to that data, it's very difficult to make decisions. And a lot of the utilities are not required to provide that in the United States to what's going on in the residences. A second part is that in partnering with your utility, a lot of the technologies were not designed for this. They're either commercial, or in the programs are either commercial or they're single family residential. This multifamily in the middle, there are so many things, like if you give an incentive to buy the thermostat, but that's disconnected from the actual account, then how does that get paid for? And the owner operator of the building has responsibility for those devices, for what happens with them. But the actual usage, which is 70% of the profile of most multifamily housing, is the residents. So the point that's been made a couple of times about engaging residents so that you're able to provide through your mobile applications the ability for them to see their green scores, to be able to track their behavior, to do gamification, that the owner operator understands the value of that interaction and puts it to play, in that they understand. I cannot tell you how many marketing departments I work with right now. We're trying to shift them to community solar to lower their scope 3 emissions, and they can control costs at the same time. But no, you can do it in this state, but you can't do it in that state. And oh, by the way, there's no resources here. All of those moving pieces, and the fact that it is, particularly in the US, and I do know in Europe, they're further ahead than we are, that we have a challenge that the utilities do not understand multifamily. Over and over and over again, they don't get it.
If I could, Carol, you hit on such a great part, and it's not just utilities. There's a lot of these things that are kind of strange in this multifamily world, and the data piece being one of the big parts of this. Who owns it? Whose is it? There's a lot of sharing. That data is very important to the performance of the building, whether you're in it or vacant. And so I think what gets kind of strange is these the cellular-based hub programs to connect the thermostats, where the residents have to then plug it in to connect it on their own Wi-Fi. They're connecting it. That data needs to be transferred. Whose is that? And again, that's some of the things that we've been thinking about of, well, it's got to be connected. It's a part of the building. It's plugged into or it's literally attached to the wall. It's the building, and you're the resident, and there's a lot of privacy that needs to be thought of what gets, obscured away or abstracted away of who it is and how it is. It's very important how that building runs if you're really trying to do an energy, management program.
And can I add something there too? So follow that, and that nothing is consistent. Mm-hmm. So 3,000 plus utilities that do electricity across the US, and not a single one has the same demand response kind of program or load shifting incentives as anybody else. So when we were talking about adding EV chargers and whether or not the building is capable of taking that load is one, who pays for the grid equipment to do that upgrade so you can do that load? And then three, the chargers, and how is that integrated? And especially as one resident moves in, another one moves out, and then, carries through, and who gets billed for that. It's a really dynamic space. And my fingers are crossed that at some point we'll get a little bit more consistency, as we're also doing more legislation around ESG for consistency.
Well, it gives more incentives too, like you're saying.
More incentives, right? Agreed.
If we can find more incentives, you'll be able to get more of this in, and that's only going to compound for everybody.
Really good points. A lot of work to be done. Oh, go ahead, Ave. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Carol and Blake hit on such great points, right? And another thing that we're seeing, right, for a utility to get a program passed, the utility commissions are just how can we help them, right? I think there's a lot of focus around how can we bring some of these technologies to disadvantaged communities, right? It's not just multifamily in affluent environments, but how can you bring smart thermostats to disadvantaged communities? How do we help them better connect solar and storage to the grid? And I think some of the things that Carol touched upon is spot on. I think one of the struggles has been the retention rate for a lot of these demand response programs. So the more and more of these devices that can get the consumer engaged and be part of it and drive additional value for them through that equipment, I think those are kind of some of the things that we're seeing that really helps the utility help us in terms of getting these programs approved and deployed.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I'd love to bring Wani back into the conversation here about, affordable housing too in the multifamily space, and how these solutions might look different for, standard or high end versus low affordable housing. Wani, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I would actually make the point when you start looking at like low, moderate income type opportunities where, it is a big issue. And I would actually say that the partnership with the utility or the local utility in those markets is actually pretty key. I know we just kind of spoke to, maybe some of the dysfunction and just like the inefficiency of working with utilities. But this is also, I think you could flip it and actually say that this is actually an opportunity where utilities can really drive that. There's a lot of funding, but like with any of the funding from an energy efficiency or utility perspective, it's kind of hard to find, sometimes hard to extract. We're working with BG&E, for example, on some of these programs, and it's pretty fantastic. I also find that, multifamily property owners and companies like that will also partner with the utility to figure out like, what do we need to do here from a LMI perspective? And so that's been pretty positive. But I think fundamentally though, with some of these properties, the technology infrastructure, and I know Blake hit on it a little bit as well, is like, it's a little difficult because it's not standardized. Oftentimes from a smart thermostat perspective, what we see is we need to provide solutions that are not connected, right? We need to find workarounds and hacks. I mean, we have situations where we're putting up like Zigbee hubs and like Cradle Point Wi-Fi things, and just to make it work, right? And it's not scalable, but at least it's a start. And what we try to do is like, it's like
the start is what proves it, right? Because you got to get that data for everybody to be able. That's right. And that's what you have. That's the unfortunate catch-22, but you're spot on.
And I'd say that data is so valuable, right? Because it's not just about rates, consumption. It's just a lot of stuff around equity as well, right? So, I guess my takeaway is it's a big opportunity. There's a lot of funding. I don't think enough vendors or companies are really pursuing it. And, you know, it's just one of the things where just even socially, it's an important thing. So.
Someone in a prior Smart Energy session made a great point that when we think about engaging residents and end users in general in their, you know, at the right point at the right time with their customer journey, it's not just about paying your bill or sign off, but also what about when you haven't paid your bill and your energy is about to be shut off, right? And that being a key moment where utilities can really enter and offer something like a smart thermostat and some education around how to save on energy and save on your bill and maybe make those bills more manageable. So actually, you know, Wani, kind of going back to you, let's take the resident point of view here. We heard in our earlier session that engagement from a consumer perspective on energy management is still a tough road. Our data does show that consumers are interested, but there's this big gap between, A, do I even have the data to start with to see myself? Is it showing to me in a way that makes sense to me in a way that I would care, and then taking action? How about in the multifamily space? What are you seeing with, you know, from the resident perspective of what they care about and what they're engaging on when it comes to energy management?
You know, from my perspective, you know, it may be a little different, just, you know, currently at Zen, but also my prior company, kind of like Carol, came sort of from the energy side, the power side. You know, one of the things that we see with a lot of our, you know, our end users is, you know, they do want to participate in sustainability and find ways to be more impactful. I think the issue is that they don't know how to do it. Like, what's the easiest way to do that? And, you know, I think that's where the struggle is. And I think what we try to do, at least in this current phase, is just throw things like demand response or energy efficiency or, you know, those types of things. And it's kind of tactical, and it's honestly not that sticky, right? It's sort of transactional. And so, you know, the question then is like, how do you better make that impact? And I think a lot of it is just reporting. I think the reporting is getting better. You know, and from our perspective, what we try to do is truly make an impact in terms of reporting. And it's not about how many cars you take off the road or how many trees you plant and things like that. I think what we try to do is create more of a sort of an asset-based report. So let's say it's the building or the region. And we also speak to, it's kind of like, where do you get your food? Like, how organic is it? Where are you sourcing it? You know, we do stuff like that. And, you know, we have partnerships with different retail energy providers and things like that. So we can actually get a little bit of that data. And, you know, it's still early stages, but as we start doing that, I think you build sort of authenticity in terms of your impact and what you do as a consumer at your home. So then what ends up happening is that, do you opt out of programs, right, when the grid is very brown, right, versus when it's green? Do you accept demand response events and other sort of tips and tricks in terms of how to become more sustainable? The last piece I would say, which is also, I think, a good piece of value that we've seen, at least in MFU, is you know, the marketplace. Like, so can we become a marketplace to sell, you know, EV charging solutions or services or, you know, green energy subscriptions and things like that? And so that's the stuff that I think is more impactful. So it's actionable and it actually hits people's bottom line. They feel good about the impact they make.
Yeah. Håkan, maybe to you here as well, providing that those sort of insights that actually engage the residents, right? What are you finding that's impactful and helping people actually make behavior change? Yeah, and I think especially when it comes to, because your previous question was about like, well, if you're in a situation where you might struggle to pay your bills, and so we actually have a range of different features, and we're rolling out some new things now ahead of this winter, which we're really expecting to be really horrible because all the prices are going up and with the whole Russia situation. So we have, for example, we have some of the features that our utility clients are rolling out include warnings when your forecasted next bill is going to be higher than the usual. Just like a really quite a simple thing, just looking at weather forecast and your forecasted consumption and the actual price in the network or in your area. We've got capabilities for you to set like budgets, and some of these utilities or retailers also, they're offering these ability to split your high bills over, like you can split it over a number of months ahead, especially really high winter bills. If you're billed for your usage period, you can distribute that over the next few months. That's
That's one of the features, not that we provide, but some of our clients are rolling out. And then, but then the kind of centerpiece of what it is that we do is really about providing these energy savings advice that are personal and matched to your consumption profile. So these are things that you could do, and based on your consumption profile, this is how much you could save. So both behavioral things that you could do right now, and that doesn't require you to make an investment in anything, but then also ranging from smaller little investments or improvements to the bigger ticket items with embedded financing. So that's kind of having that suite of solutions from simple and quick to big and difficult is really where, I mean, that's where we need to use this data for, really.
Yep. And we only have about 5 minutes left. We have a few questions here. So someone did bring up Matter as an interoperability standard and what it means for the MDU space. So I would be interested in understanding maybe actually, Advait, from Eaton's perspective, you're thinking about something, a lot of times we talk about Matter in the smart home and single family resident type perspective. The first products that are coming out that are going to be Matter supported are the top ones really in the smart home space, like cameras, locks, lights, thermostats. How about battery storage, EVs? Is there any appetite for supporting the Matter standard in those types of products as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%, right? And when you look at like the smart home energy space, I think one thing's clear is, there's not one company that can offer all the different devices that are needed, right? So I think there's a huge amount of need from an interoperability standpoint, and we completely believe in that. We work with a lot of different partners, including Samsung and Google and Amazon. So again, we are very engaged with most of these partners on some of their early preview integrations that they're doing around Matter. So absolutely, I can. In a few years, right, I can't talk about battery energy storage, but some of the device categories that we do around EV charging, around smart breakers, around smart load centers, absolutely, that's firmly in our plans, just because we see the need for it all to be interoperable, right? That's how we're going to drive value from a consumer standpoint. That's how we're going to drive the stickiness by trying to give them a single pane of glass experience, and I think Matter plays a key role in that.
Blake or Carol, would either of you guys like to comment as well from more of a platform perspective, right? Where Matter fits in pulling these diverse types of products together to work together and communicate better?
Sure. I think that there's a space for it for residents to like bring their own device to the building. But, this might be controversial and maybe like famous last words, but I don't think Matter matters in the MDU space. It's all about making the building itself connected. You have all of these disparate point solutions that are all coming together to try to, make a building smart. You think about it, you got all these literal materials that come together to make the building itself. The building itself is the hardware. And so I think you're figuring out how to let people connect to that.
And Carol, you were shaking your head there. So go ahead and add your thoughts.
Well, the first thing that came to mind, do you guys remember the Green Button initiative? And that was supposed to be a standard to share all of this great data, and how many years? That was a decade ago. And there's only like 100 utilities that even use it in the US. I mean, the reality is that's different than device standards. And we've learned absolutely with EV charging that, if you have the wrong plug and you have the wrong standards and you don't have a standard, we're all in trouble. But I think the point is there's honestly a lot of standards already out there for how to securely exchange data and how to securely exchange controls if we just all use them. And I think the bigger operational thing, the people that are the owner operators, they don't care, right? And the reality is that, we're all going to want to use our phones to drive what's in my house. But my house is owned and operated by the people that own and operate that building. So how do we make that work? And I don't think Matter will get us there. So that's a personal opinion. And I think the really important thing though is if we could get to a point where the world understood that multifamily is its own creature. It is not commercial. It is not residential. 70% of what goes on in that building is the human, the software. If the building is the hardware, the human is the software. Mm-hmm. And that includes the property staff and what they choose to do and not do. And if we don't understand that and we can't get the programs in line with that, we're going to probably be in trouble.
Well, I would love to end on that point. So thank you all so much for your time and your insights today and for all of the work that you're doing in the industry. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all. So just a reminder that we do have our latest study on smart energy at home, renewable, responsive, resilient. That's available if you're interested in more of the research and perspective from the consumer point of view on energy management in the home and the major smart energy type products that are going into homes, as well as we just published. So shout out to Chris here, our earlier moderator, for being the lead author on the smart thermostat market assessment. So really taking a look at that market specifically and the use cases and the interest and the specific consumer segments that are using these devices and what their preferences are. Later this year, we'll be having research come out specifically to EVs in the smart home, what the opportunity there is, as well as an industry report covering opportunities for the smart home when we think about solar and storage. So really big topics this year. Our next session is Thursday, August 4th, where we are going deep all about electric vehicles. So please join us to understand the really strongly growing interest and appeal of EVs and what that means for the grid, for consumers, for everybody in the ecosystem. And of course, if you're interested in sponsoring Smart Energy Summit or any of our events, interested in our research or interested in speaking at a future event, please reach out to our team. Thanks again to our sponsors, Schneider Electric, SmartThings, Rapid Response Monitoring, Zen Ecosystems, and Particle for your support so that we can host these smart energy sessions. Thank you all. We'll see you in August. On average, U.S. broadband households with smart home devices own more than 7 devices and spend thousands of dollars a year on home services. Parks Associates Consumer Insights dashboards share adoption, consumer demand, and market changes across the year for 5 leading markets serving the connected home to identify critical shifts in these markets and in consumer sentiment by tracking the core metrics that matter. This consumer research draws from surveys of more than 10,000 U.S. households, including trending data, sometimes reaching back more than a decade. Parks Associates offers consumer insights dashboards for 5 markets: home services, consumer electronics, video services, residential security, and smart home. To share a little more, we recently released the Smart Home Dashboard, revealing that 1/4 of US broadband households bought at least one smart home device in the past 12 months. And households with at least one smart home device now own, on average, more than 7 devices. This dashboard covers the extensive product categories active in the smart home, including smart thermostats, smart appliances, network cameras, video doorbells, smart smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, smart door locks, smart garage door openers, and smart lighting products, among others. We also recently announced the release of the Home Services Dashboard, tracking broadband, mobile, and other consumer services. This dashboard shows that as of Q1 2021, the percentage of US broadband households with standalone broadband service increased from 33% in Q1 2018 to 41% in Q1 2021, following the declining popularity of pay TV bundles. These consumers pay $64 per month on average for standalone broadband service, up from just $39 per broadband household in 2011, a 64% growth rate. The fastest growing segment of home service bundles is a double play combining home internet and mobile service. Consumers are placing a greater emphasis on high quality broadband and mobile services, which is building value in bundling these services. Both the residential broadband and mobile industries experienced substantial growth during 2020 and into the first half of 2021, with demand particularly strong for high-speed internet and fiber connections. And 19% of US broadband households currently bundle mobile and home internet services, paying an average of $128 per month. Going forward, 24% of US broadband households reported plans to upgrade their home broadband, which would drive broadband service ARPU upwards 5% year over year. Adoption of residential security services has also continued to increase following the COVID-19 pandemic, creating additional bundling opportunities among connectivity and peace of mind services heading into the second half of 2021. Our dashboards provide companies with ongoing and actionable data on the adoption, purchase intentions, and trends for key markets serving the connected consumer at home. We are excited to bring this valuable trending data and insights to the market. To subscribe or request more information, please contact our sales team at sales@parksassociates.com.